Freyssinet presents a quick how-to guide on performing pre-start meetings. The aim of this animation is to make you aware of how valuable pre-start meetings are and how to perform them effectively so we can increase everyone's ability to work safely. To stress the importance of pre-start meetings, we have made them a part of our golden rules, and they are mandatory before every shift. Our golden rule states, I start each shift with a pre-start meeting given by the supervisor. I assess with my crew and my supervisor the major risks involved in the daily tasks. Let's start with why we have pre-start meetings. The main purpose of pre-start meetings is to compare what's been planned with what the actual site conditions are when work needs to be carried out. This includes identifying unplanned for hazards, for example, edge protection that isn't compliant with our safety standards, or co-activities with contractors, which require different teams to coordinate their tasks properly to ensure safety. Pre-start meetings allow project supervisors or team leaders to communicate such site-specific hazards and how to avoid them to operatives before their shift begins. We do them before every work shift and for every new task, and must include all workers under our supervision. So how do you prepare for a pre-start meeting? Safety leadership starts with being prepared. If you're not prepared, your team will pick up on it, and you will lose their concentration or their willingness to listen. Once you've identified the on-site hazards where your team will be working, consult other Freyssinet teams and contractors to discuss and agree on what controls are the best to implement. Aim to spend between 15 to 30 minutes preparing for pre-start meetings. Check that all documentation that is specific to your shift is complete. This includes risk assessments and permits to work. Next, you'll need to review what happened during the previous shift and obtain the necessary information so you can give feedback to your team. Try to find out about any near misses, equipment failure, tasks that required co-activity, and what good practices were noticed during the previous shift that could be useful for the upcoming shift. You'll also need to do a physical inspection of the work area in case any hazards or risks were overlooked. After you've collected all the necessary information, write it down on a board or sheet of paper so you can discuss it with your team before they start their next shift. This includes the current days or shifts targets, the risks and hazards, and what preventative measures can be taken to avoid the identified risks and hazards. Now let's look at how to deliver a pre-start meeting. A pre-start meeting should take about 5 to 10 minutes, and the best place to hold them is at the area where your team will be working. Talk your team through all the relevant information that you've gathered. If it helps to explain something to your team by showing them or taking them to a specific location on site, then do it. Use pictures, diagrams, or demonstrations to make the meeting more interesting where possible. Ask 1 or 2 team members to repeat some of the key points to gauge their understanding and make time for any questions. Remember, the more you engage with your team, the more chance they'll take in what you're saying and the safer they'll work. If you notice during your pre-start meeting that site conditions do not meet our safety standards and could therefore put people at risk, then you must stop or delay any works until site conditions are improved and made safer. To complete a pre-start meeting, ask everyone to write their name and signatures on the board or sheet of paper you've used in preparing for your pre-start meeting. If you used a board, then take a photograph of the complete board, including the names and signatures as proof. And if you used a sheet, leave it at the point of work until the end of the shift and then place it in the safety file. Before we move on to the 5th and final stage of pre-start meetings, let's have a quick recap of the first 4 stages and their steps. To check that the site conditions where work will be carried out are safe to work in, and that everyone is made aware of any hazards and how to avoid them. Gather as much information about your team's work area that could affect any of their tasks and their ability to carry them out safely. This can include feedback from the previous shift that could include their risk assessments or any near misses experienced. Involve your team in pre-start meetings and use interesting ways of gaining and maintaining their attention and make it real. Get your team to commit to working safely by getting everyone to sign the pre-start meeting board or sheet. Keep a record of this. Once you've got the basics down and you feel comfortable and confident, you can start taking your pre-start meetings to the next level. These are some suggestions for additional content to add. Perform a mini quiz to test your team's understanding. Ask other project supervisors or team leaders to observe and provide feedback on your pre-start meetings, and do the same for them. Choose a different team member to perform or explain a part of your pre-start meeting. For example, ask them to explain a recent safety alert. At the end of the shift, ask your team to go on a 5-minute hazard hunt, and then use their findings for the next day's pre-start meeting. The important thing is to find what works best for you and your team, so don't be afraid to experiment as long as you put safety first.